following program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.
Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back. Welcome to Speak Up TV. I'm Kevin Avard, your host. Today we're going to be talking with another candidate for State Senate in District 11. Dan Hynes, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I understand you're running. Good luck on your race too.
I am running. There's a host of us running, so obviously there's a need for some change.
There's a need for some change. That's why I decided to run. I'm tired of, I think we're moving in the wrong direction. So There's a poll recently I disagree with saying that people are happy. I don't think people are happy. We certainly can do better. There's a lot of room for improvement, and that's why I decided to run.
Right. Now, what's your background?
Yep, so my background is I'm a small business owner. I'm an attorney and own a law firm. And as a small business owner, I think that brings a lot of different things that you might not otherwise get in certain candidates. So I'm not a politician. I am a small business owner. This is my first time running. I've never held elected office. I've never been in Concord. I think those are good things. I can look at things from a different perspective and don't really have loyalties to certain organizations that I have to vote that way. I'm going to vote how I think is correct and what the constituents want.
So you're a member of the Bar Association?
I'm a member of the Bar Association, yes.
Okay. You know, in the past there were some controversial things that were brought up. I don't know if you want to address any of those.
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So when I first started out as a lawyer, I threatened some hair salons with a lawsuit and settled that lawsuit. I thought I could have brought the lawsuit, but the court found out, or ultimately held that I didn't have standing to bring that lawsuit. And as a result, I was charged with extortion and convicted of that. I had since had that conviction annulled, so I do not have a criminal record anymore. But it was a mistake at the time. I thought I could bring the lawsuit, and it was in part for my thought process is that I had similar success, frankly, in Massachusetts, and the law is just different up here. It was a misunderstanding of the law, and I do regret it, and I believe it was an honest mistake. I was always open and upfront with what I was doing. I certainly would not have brought that lawsuit or threatened it if I did not think I could bring it.
All right, and what type of law do you practice?
Yep, so right now, criminal defense is what I do.
Criminal defense, and how's business?
Business is good. Oddly bad economy, which I do not want, helps my practice, but I'm obviously not in it for the money. You know what we get paid. This isn't it. I'm in it to make change.
Yeah, and speaking of change, I mean, there's a lot of things that happened in this previous last year or two, and you know, we've seen taxes, we've seen Medicaid expansion. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've been disappointed in some of the Republican leadership voting for Obamacare or Medicaid expansion. I oppose Medicaid expansion. I think that's the wrong way to go about things. I obviously, like everyone else, want affordable health care. I don't think Obamacare, or I refer to it as the Unaffordable Health Care Act, is the best way to do that. I think health care relates to the economy. What I really would like to see is we get rid of the monopoly that there presently is in the healthcare in New Hampshire. I want to open it up so that New Hampshire citizens can shop across borders, bring in some more insurance providers, and I think that is the best way to lower costs. The free market needs to come in, and we shouldn't have a monopoly like that.
Why do you think they pushed it through so quickly? What were some of the alternatives been? You know, this whole idea that, you know, first of all, Obamacare was sold to the American people on a lie.
Yes.
You're going to be able to keep your doctors. You're going to be able to keep your hospital, basically. You're going to be able to, the premiums are going to go down $2,500. There were a host of issues, and obviously none of them were true.
Right.
it also was deemed that it wasn't a tax. Well, that's how it passed the Supreme Court.
Yep.
And one of the questions I just keep asking people, every time the premiums go up, is that a tax increase?
It certainly is costing me money. I don't care what they call it. If I have to pay money out of pocket, that's less money I have. They can call it whatever they want. It's not helping me. And force.
Why do you think New Hampshire pushed this Medicaid expansion? Is what I'm trying to get. Why do you think they wanted to do that so quickly? What was the big rush?
Well, I think it's the fallacy of free federal money. So when the government says, we're going to give you all this money, you don't have to do anything, hey, that sounds good. I don't think the government's going to keep up their end of the deal like they have not done on many past issues. And I think that's one way to look at it. And frankly, I mean, it sounds good to the average person that we're giving out more health care. Now, to me, that doesn't sound good. I don't want that. I want better health care. I want options. That's what I want.
And obviously, if it comes under the 90% or something to that effect, it's supposed to sunset. But we need people to have courage to get rid of this. Will you vote to let it sunset if the funding isn't there?
Yes, I would vote to let it sunset. So I agree with you that it does take a lot to vote to repeal that, and that's why I'm disappointed that our Republican Senate, they didn't have to make those concessions in the first place. They did not have to bring that to a vote. They could have just stuck with the Republican platform, vote against it, not have to say, well, it's good for now, and we'll revisit this issue in the future.
A lot of people are talking about the Republican platform, but there are some candidates that aren't really sticking to it. Is it necessary that people, if they run on a ticket, that they stick to that platform?
That's a tough issue. I would say I don't follow the Republican platform 100%. So I think there's certainly a lot of room for it. So I consider myself a conservative or libertarian leading or really a liberty Republican. So a lot of the social issues is, I think, where there's a major disagreement between myself and some other people. But on the social or on the financial issues, such as Obamacare, lowering taxes, smaller government's a better government.
And it seems like they can't raise enough taxes.
They can't, and we don't have a revenue problem. We have a spending problem.
Right, and that seems to be, everybody seems to be all hurried around. Hey, that'll generate enough revenue for the state. Let's do this. Let's do this. Let's get in a casino, and raise more revenue. Well, by raising more revenue, aren't we just growing the government?
It is growing the government, and there's really no stop to it. I fear it's going to lead to an income tax or a sales tax, which obviously I'm against both of those. And besides not increasing taxes, I really want to lower the business profit tax.
Right.
So I explained.
What is that at right now?
Yep, it's roughly 10% when you combine the business profit tax with the enterprise one. And I explain to people that tax is basically an income tax on small business owners. It's not called that because that doesn't sound good, but that's what you're doing. If my income is derived from my business and you're taxing that, that's money I have to give back.
Isn't there an income tax on elderly too, if they have a retirement interest on their dividends?
Yeah, there's a lot of, dividend tax. There's a lot of different taxes that really are income taxes and just aren't called that. And I think by lowering the business profit tax, it will spur the economy, it will create jobs, and we'll be paying the employees more. So,
well, one of the things somebody will say was, what are you going to do if you cut these taxes? Then obviously, where are you going to cut in the government?
Yep. Well, there's two options, really three options. We could spend our money more wisely, we could make cuts, or we could increase revenue. So I do think it's not going to be a one-to-one offset here. I think if you decrease it, it's going to bring businesses to New Hampshire. So the fact that Massachusetts has a lower business profit tax than us, that's a problem. We're losing out to Massachusetts.
Well, that's why we got this train of vehicles going down south, obviously. You go in the morning down Route 3, you see the traffic jam. Hey, get me to work, and it's not in New Hampshire.
I want it the other way around. I want all those Massachusetts people or everyone in New Hampshire. I think jobs, we need more jobs, and I think decreasing the business profit tax is the way to get businesses here.
It's also come to mind also that the power plant in Bow is going to be, they're thinking about shutting that down, and I don't see a plan B. What are your thoughts about that?
That's a difficult issue. I think when we're obviously, we don't want to eliminate jobs, and the government, I mean, when they're passing legislation, a lot of time there's things that they don't consider. So
New Hampshire has some of the highest energy costs around, too. Yeah. So if you want to attract businesses to New Hampshire,
lower the costs.
Yeah, so it's interesting.
How about right to work? What are your thoughts about that?
Yep, pro right to work. So I don't think that the now employees, or unions rather, should be forcing people to pay for them when they don't want to be in it. I think it comes down to the free market and First Amendment issues, really. So I do not think I should be forced to pay for something that I don't want to join. It's really forced joining the union.
You know, you mentioned the First Amendment. I know that recently 42 Democrats in Congress tried to amend, they were going to try to amend the First Amendment. Just recently, they voted to do such. And it seemed in New Hampshire, we just passed that buffer zone, knowing that there was legislation pending in Massachusetts that challenged the very same thing. What do you think the rush was for that?
Well, I think the rush was that the Democrats had a good election term last time and will not have those numbers in the upcoming election. I agree with your concern. I was against the buffer zone passing, and I think the legislature should have done what they often do, is defer on things and send them to the New Hampshire Supreme Court for an advisory opinion. This would have been a perfect case for that. They knew this issue was out there. They knew it was at the U.S. Supreme Court. And frankly, I expect the New Hampshire Supreme Court would have waited until the U.S. Supreme Court decided. And now what we have to do is challenge that in court. I think that's ridiculous. It's a waste of court resources that we don't have. We're constantly cutting courts. It can take years before someone gets their day in court, and now we're just taking away those resources, passing what I believe is an unconstitutional law.
There's you're an attorney, so you may know that there are some situations where there's parental alienation going on in our state, and this has to do with law-abiding citizens being challenged to defend themselves when there's no need to, and at the same time losing custody and access to their children. You know, if it were happening here and there, it's one thing, but I'm hearing it over and over and over again. There seems to be an industry that capitalizes on making it difficult for both parents to parent equally. Are you familiar with the complaints?
Slightly. I did family law in the past, don't presently do it, but I'm sort of familiar with the issue.
So you've grown up.
Yeah. And yeah, I think we certainly can look, we need a better system. I think part of the problem is judges who are just completely unaccountable can make any decision whatsoever. And where's the redress? People, if they can't afford to hire a lawyer, they certainly can't afford to appeal their decision to the New Hampshire Supreme Court or what it takes. A lot of people... And
that has actually just recently changed, Rule 3.9, which automatically, you're allowed an automatic appeal.
Yep.
And for forever, they weren't allowing that to happen, and they just changed that rule, allowing people that automatic appeal. But some people get shot down, even though they spent $50,000, $60,000 on evidence. You got your guardian ad litems, and yet they've committed no crime, and they're not allowed to see their children. Because they didn't reach a required standard. We had some cases where there was a sealed envelope that was before the judge, and the judge said, Mr. Vandenberg, whatever's in this envelope, you can't see it, but you can't see your daughter either. That violates so much in my mind as far as, and he's committed no crime. These are the issues that really trouble me, and I'm jumping on you a little bit because, you know, we're all talking about the economy, and everybody's struggling. And, you know, we see the 4-cent gas tax. Well, it's only 4 cents. Well, when people are counting their pennies, right? Then you look at the 9% Hillsborough budget that just went up. Well, that's just pennies. People are still counting pennies. And they're so distracted at the cost of bread and the price of gas and trying to find work. And yet our justice system is not protecting the rights of the children. It's not protecting the rights of the fathers and the mothers equally in these courts. We challenged it a few years back with CACR 26. We were going to try to amend Article 73A, which allowed the people to challenge some of the rules of the court. Obviously, the bar came out against that, which was not in the interest of the people. But, you know, how do you get your message out? So, you know, we can shoot for a good economy, but are these some of the priorities that you would like to look at?
Well, court reform is important. So particularly, I mean, if someone's losing their children, I think that should be held to the same standard as criminal. I mean, in a criminal case, your liberty is at stake. You can go to jail. Frankly, I'd rather go to jail than lose my kid if I had that choice.
And there are some people that have actually burnt themselves on the stakes in Keene. You know, the 14th Amendment, right? Equal protection under the law. I mean, that covers such a wide variety of issues where if you apply one law towards one person but don't apply it towards another, that's unjust.
Yes.
And it just seems that there's many faces to that. And that's one of my concerns as I'm running, that these people cannot fall through the cracks in the process of, yes, we got to get elected. We got to fix the economy. We got to get jobs. But if everything's running smooth and we don't have a justice system that we can have faith in, it's all for nothing, in my opinion. I didn't mean to jump on you too much on that. But, you know, you covered the right to work and you covered some other issues. What are the most pressing issues that you feel that you want your prospective voters to be considering about you?
Yep, I think jobs and the economy are really important. I also want to focus on education, which also falls into the economy. So I think we have a problem when graduates are graduating with huge amounts of debt and they go out there looking for a job. They can't find one. What do? They leave New Hampshire and they go to another state.
Right.
We shouldn't have that.
How would we keep them?
Well, if there's jobs available and there's highly qualified people, I think that's a good match. So to me, I think we don't have the jobs for them.
Recently, some of the unions have even come out across the country. I don't know about in New Hampshire, but against this Common Core, this federally, this federal deal. You know, obviously there's some money attached to it. There's some testing, but they say, well, the curriculum is still local. But is it?
It's not. I oppose Common Core for two reasons. One, it's a federal mandate, and I don't think the federal government knows how towns can best teach their children. I think teachers, students, and parents know what's best for the individual person. And besides that, I think Common Core, particularly their math, it's a mess. I think it's incredibly difficult. It makes no sense. And it's really discouraging to a child if they, at a young age, can't figure out simple math because the government's teaching it in a poor fashion. That's going to discourage them from wanting to learn and wanting to go to school and wanting to better themselves. So I do oppose Common Core. And I've been speaking with a lot of teachers who I feel are the same way. I think it's certain unions that are blocking us on this issue.
Why is that? What's in it for the unions?
Money and control is what I would guess. I don't specifically know. I think generally unions should be protecting their teachers, but I think in this case there's a really divide and they're doing their teachers a disservice.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. It's funny that there was another guest that at one point they said about talking about the education, how that it's interesting how that will educate them in our local colleges. We're actually, you know, subsidizing that to some degree. If you're from New Hampshire, you go into UNH, and you know, obviously they get some taxpayer funds, and then they leave.
Right.
Why can't we retain them? And some of the reasons, even the local manufacturers. Hey, some of these kids can't even do simple arithmetic, and we're throwing this advanced, if you will, math through Common Core on them, and it seems to be counterproductive.
I agree, and I think our graduates leaving, that is a problem. I would rather pay, or basically an incentive or a loan forbearance if they continue to stay in the state, and obviously we want them to have jobs in the state, so I would rather see that sort of encompassed in the tuition breaks that they get.
Okay, social issues. I know you don't want to talk a little bit about them, but people are concerned.
Yes.
Right to life.
Right to life. So I'm pro-life. I understand, I mean, generally I like to say I'm pro-choice on everything. That would be the one issue. So I'm pro-choice of the unborn baby. So I understand we should have, or I understand certain limits with it. Unfortunately, I mean, I follow the law. So the Supreme Court has made its decision, Roe v. Wade. I'm not sure there's a whole lot that can be done, but on issues such as buffer zone, I would have voted against that buffer zone.
So, you know, it's an interesting topic because, you know, when we talk about the 14th Amendment, equal protection under law, if one can determine that life begins at conception, are they guaranteed the right to life? You know what I'm saying? Does the 14th Amendment apply at that point? And that's some of the, you know, I believe it starts at conception, and I believe the 14th Amendment myself is something that should apply to them. But obviously there's others that feel, well, you know, then there's the right to privacy and the Roe v. Wade situation. I fall on the right to life myself.
I think the court would agree with you in Roe v. Wade in that they just found that the conception was not basically the viable point, but
Right, and back then, they really didn't have the science that they have today. And even with some of my libertarian friends that, you know, we can sit down and we can argue back and forth, but when push comes to shove, the science does seem to indicate and prove that, you know, when it turns blue or when that little tester turns, something's going on.
Yep.
And there's a life there. And you watch the Discovery Channel, but, you know, that's, you know, what are some of the other issues? What about legalizing marijuana?
Yep, so drug reform I think is a big issue. So I am in favor of decriminalizing marijuana. I think we should treat it like alcohol. I think there's science that shows alcohol is more harmful than marijuana, or marijuana less harmful than alcohol, depending on how you want to look at it. Mm-hmm. And right now, alcohol is the #2 revenue source for New Hampshire.
Man, nice buildings going up on the highway, huh?
Yeah, I don't know that I want marijuana to be the #2 source, but if it's #3, I'm okay with that. Yeah. I think really from a smaller government, I want the government out of my wallet and I want them out of my bedroom. So I don't think that I consider marijuana smoking a victimless crime. Now people are going to say, well, you can harm people while on it, such as DWI. We already have a law against DWI. I don't want to change the law against DWI.
What most people don't realize is that the legislature, I believe, passed the fact that if you actually drink Benadryl,
yes,
and you're driving up the road with some Benadryl, or you're recovering from Ambien or something to that from the night before, you could get stopped and get a DWI.
Yep, so January of last year, I posed this law. It used to be any controlled drug, and now it's anything. And I tell people come to me, they get arrested for DWI, and they're like, well, I had a prescription for it. It doesn't matter. It's like alcohol. You can lawfully drink, but you can't lawfully drink and drive if it impairs your ability to drive. So Ambien
is amazing.
Ambien.
You take that and you're like bonkers. You know,
yes.
that. And if somebody's going to get on behind a wheel, that's worse than, you know, that's worse than 2 or 3 drinks, probably even 4 drinks, and people do it.
Yep.
And so, you know, there needs to be a consistency. Again, equal protection under the laws, and that has to do with some of the laws itself. I think that need to have a fair balance. It's an interesting, Second Amendment, again. We're constantly under attack on the Second Amendment issues. When I look at some of the candidates, you know, some people, they want to, you know, register certain firearms versus non-certain firearms. Where do you stand on that?
Yep, so I'm pro-Second Amendment. I'm an NRA member. I'm a gun owner, and I testified last term in the legislature when they were trying to do the background bill. I think the devil was in the details in that. It specifically prohibited me from transferring, which was defined as handing someone a gun. So I specifically testified to that. If I'm a lawful gun owner and I give a gun to my child, brother, neighbor, and they can also lawfully shoot, that would have been illegal. It would have required me to go to the gun store, I guess, to transfer a gun to then transfer it back. Made no sense. I oppose that. I want the streets safe, and we have adequate gun laws now. We need to keep guns out of the hands of criminals, really, not law-abiding citizens. So I am pro-Second Amendment.
It seems like Chicago doesn't seem to get the message. The stricter the gun laws, the more crime that seems to be there, and people can't protect themselves. You come to New Hampshire, where there's it's a lot less restrictive, and it was just deemed one of the best places in the country to live.
Yep, and thankfully, this is one of the good spots. The court stepped in and forced Chicago to have the concealed carry, and an off-duty officer recently has concealed carry and prevented a lot more deaths, so certainly works.
All right, so are there any other major issues that you think you'd want to cover today? Do you have an appeal to the audience that you'd like to mention?
Yep. So economy, education, I think are really important subjects. And on social issues, like I said, I'm in favor of smaller government. So when the government's coming in telling me how I can do things, I'm against that. Really, there's 2 options. Either you can make the best choice for you, or the government can make your decision for you. And I want you to make that choice.
You know, there was one other issue that came up to mind, and I think it was House Bill 1409. And, you know, I was doing a show, a Jeff Chedister show, and somebody had called about that, and what's House Bill 1409? And I think it had to do with the battered women. And, of course, rent and homeowners that are renting out their properties. And it seems as though that there's this way of using a bad situation and exploiting somebody's liberty by using that. For instance, they were going to force landlords to take on added responsibility to house, specific battered women. Well, who's against helping
Right.
battered women? Who's against helping people that are in harm's way? But why are you taking somebody else's liberty to do it in the process? And it seems as though some of these bills are very carefully crafted in order to take away landowners' rights, property rights. Seems to be under attack just as much as the Second Amendment or the First Amendment. And what is going on? Why is it? There's always this somebody out there, this boogeyman who's trying to take away all our liberties. Who is it? What are they doing? We want to help. We want to help battered women. We want to help them. We want to have. But why are you taking this person's liberty in the process of doing that?
I agree, and I think you sort of answer. I think it's feel-good legislation. So whenever someone says it's for the children, it's for battered women. Obviously, we're not against battered women, but if you're giving extra rights to someone, those rights you're taking away from someone else who did nothing wrong. So I would be, there's shelters out there. There's a lot of resources I think we can do and prevent battered women and domestic violence victims, but forcing landowners to rent that they might not otherwise do, I would be against that.
Right. Well, how do people contact you, and do you have a website?
I have a website, Hynes4nh.com, and people can feel free to give me a call at 603-583-4442. I'd be happy to answer any questions. I'm out there meeting people, going to events, and I'm interested in what people are interested in. I want to know how to best serve them.
And you're a public defender, you said?
No, private attorney.
Private attorney, okay. But you have the background of a defense attorney.
Yes, so yeah, I'm a constitutional lawyer, criminal defense lawyer, whatever you want to call it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming on Speak Up.
Thank you for having me.
I appreciate it.
Thank you.
And that's Speak Up for now, and thank you for watching the show. If you have any questions, call Dan Hynes, find out, visit his website and find out what he's all about. Until then, thanks for watching Speak Up. We hope that this is helpful to you. If you would like to be a guest on Speak Up, please contact me at speakupnh@gmail.com. We'll help you be heard. Every day, citizens around the country are faced with new dilemmas that affect them profoundly. Whether it's injustice, discrimination, falling through the cracks, scandals and cronyism, balances of power, ethics, religious freedoms, state versus citizens, and unfunded mandates, and the list goes on and on and on. Welcome to Speak Up. It's directed at those who have fallen through the cracks, and it gives them a voice. It's your turn to speak up, to stand up and fight back.
The preceding program was provided by an independent producer solely responsible for its content. The opinions expressed do not necessarily represent the views of this station, its staff, board of directors, or underwriters.